Welcome to Challenger Deep, athletes rising above adversity, where we explore stories of athletes who faced their lowest points and risen to incredible heights. Did you know Challenger Deep is the lowest point in the ocean, making it the lowest point on Earth? When you're at your lowest, the beautiful truth is there's nowhere to go but up. We all face adversity, but how we choose to respond defines who we become. Join hosts Jeff Heggie and Tami Matheny as we share powerful stories of everyday athletes' resilience, growth, and triumph. These stories will inspire you to rise above your challenges and reach new heights. Let's dive in.
All right. Welcome, everyone, back to Challenger Deep podcast. Today, we are excited to have Caity Patterson, a collegiate softball player. So welcome, Caity. Give us a little background about who you are and where you are.
Okay, so my name is Caity. I'm from Sarasota, Florida. I'm 19. I'm in my second year of college. I'm a pitcher. I play at FIU. I'm in my second year, but it's my first year technically athletically, so I'm redoing my last year. I grew up in Georgia in the travel ball circuit there, which was just super, super competitive. And then I moved to Florida to start high school. And ever since then, I've just been history, I guess.
All right. Well, we've shared with you what this podcast is about, and Challenger Deep is the lowest point on Earth. And we're wanting to help athletes when they get to that low point, rising above that adversity. So before we even get into your story, what does adversity mean to you when you hear that word?
Honestly, like it's taken me so long to really understand what adversity is and how to really use it and utilize it as an athlete because it isn't always a bad thing. For me in the past year, through kind of my experience and my story, like the biggest thing that adversity has meant to me is just taking everything like 1 second, one pitch at a time and walking by faith and trusting my preparation, having grace for myself throughout the process as well. That's what I would say would be really what adversity is to me, is just like having so much grace through myself as I'm growing, as I'm learning, and walking by faith through the entire thing.
Hey, this episode of Challenger Deep Athletes Rise Above Adversity is brought to you by doTERRA, the world's leader in essential oils and wellness products. Are you ready to fuel your health and recovery like a pro? Listeners of this podcast can get 25% off all their doTERRA products and supplements. Head to the link in our show notes or go to confidentathleteprogram.com/doTERRA and start your journey to peak performance today.
Awesome there.
Very
Um,
cool.
yes, very. That's one of the best I've heard. So let's get into your adversity then. I know you've shared behind the scenes with me, but Jeff doesn't even know that much, and our listeners. So tell us about your whole transition into college.
Okay, so I got recruited my junior summer, beginning of senior year. I had a couple options of places to go. I was really just like nervous to pick a school, didn't really know where to go. And then my first school had contacted me. One of the biggest priorities to me was staying in Florida. So when my first school had contacted me, I pretty much committed within the week um, to my first school from Florida in the fall of my senior year. And I was just honestly, the recruiting process in itself is a whole different battle. But yeah, so I committed there my senior year. I was super excited as a senior, super hopeful, super just ready to go in. I had always dreamed of playing in college. Like that was the end goal, and I had finally met it. When I went in to my first year of college, it just wasn't as how I expected it to be. I really struggled on just like a mental level, and like it just wasn't the environment that was best suited for me. And I never, like, as growing up, thought that that could happen, that I could go someplace that I just wasn't meant to be. And so after my first year, I entered the transfer portal, And that was just a really big step for me because I was dealing with so much pain, like physical pain, mental pain, just like I wasn't being successful and I was just trying to heal myself back. So I entered the portal not knowing if I would go anywhere. I was kind of done with the whole college sports thing and just wanted to be a student. I struggled with self confidence really badly. I was just really done. Like I had had enough. My first year was just very much not what I had expected it to be. And so yeah, then I just like was ready to give up, was ready to be done. I spent probably the spring of my first year just like battling and fighting and all that, just trying to get, things to get better, and they just didn't. And so it was just a really frustrating time in my life. And the transfer portal now is such a scary place to be because once you enter, you don't know if you're going to go anywhere. And so it's such a new like landscape of college sports that I think like there's just so many people that just go in and never come out. So it was just really scary for me to just reroute my whole entire life, and not just as a softball player, but like learning how to get that back and like try again at a new place was just all such a big obstacle for me. And honestly, overcoming that is one of like the proudest things I'm like proud of myself for. It was just a really hard time in my like softball career and also in my life.
That's really interesting because it's a big jump from playing high school sports, even if you're playing in competitive outside your high school league and stuff, to
Mhm.
going to college. Was it D1?
Yes.
Yeah. So now you go to D1, and just going to college as a student adds enough stress and anxiety and all those things that it is. But you go as a D1 athlete, and it's a job. You've got a full-time job, and it's a lot different. And so you're dealing with all that, plus any outside adversity that you might have, environment, teammates, coaches, all of those things. And that's one of the things I love talking with athletes about when we're working with them in the Confident Athlete program, is having them reflect back on, why you started, because I love the sport, I enjoyed it, those sort of things, and who you're playing for. Because it was really interesting listening to you talk about getting through that first year and you were done. You were ready just to go to school. So talk to us about that whole process of how you got to the point from basically ready to quit or give up to loving what you're doing again.
Yeah. It was definitely a long, 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 long journey with that. When I came home from school, I had my call with my coach and I wasn't going back. And I, was talking to my parents and they were like, this is what's best for you, anyways. Like, softball or not, like, my parents were a really big factor because they just said, like, you can't go back to the way you were again, like, because it was just so unhealthy. And I think, like, it was just so out of my control. And it wasn't a mindset fix, it wasn't a physical fix. I had to physically switch locations in order to be healing, in order to be in a healthy environment. So deciding to play again was actually kind of insane. I went home and my parents told me, and they were like, we're so proud of you no matter what, because they were kind of expecting me to quit too. Like, it was like a mutual, like, I was done. But I went into the portal and I just started talking to coaches, and there were so many coaches, so many wonderful people that had reached out to me and that had, said stuff and said words of encouragement when I was struggling in a really hard time. And a few weeks into my summer, I just realized, like, after I had healed a lot physically, because I was suffering from like really bad problems with my feet. Like, I had bone bruises all over my feet because I would practice, like, I would pitch 3 times a day in addition to practice. I would wake up in the morning and pitch, I'd go to practice, and then I'd stay after and pitch. So I just like giving myself time, but also like my community, like everybody at home just was so helpful in like helping me get back on my feet, and my parents, and they didn't pressure me into anything, and that was the best thing ever for me. And so I had gone on visits, and then I got a call from FIU one day, and I was actually just going to commit to a school close to home. It was a Division II school, and I was like, okay, like this is safe. It's close to home. If I have problems, I can just go home. And then FIU called me the day I was going to commit, and I was like, this is definitely not by accident. Like, I need to seek this out. I need to figure out what's going on here. And I just went there and absolutely loved it. And I loved the coaches and I loved the environment. And so I decided to commit there.
In the Challenger Deep book, a lot of our stories evolve around what I have coined the circle of success. And there's 3 circles in that. And you've spoken to one a lot, but I want to get your viewpoint on this. So I believe if you have unity, as you've talked about, being in that right environment and having the support of people at home, and especially your parents, and if you have the right focus, like you're focused on what is good, what you can do, and you have confidence, then you're going to overcome any challenge. So, how has that circle evolved now that you are at FIU? You've again talked about the play that Unity had in it, but speak to the confidence or the focus.
Yeah, it definitely took a while to get back. One thing I kept having to remind myself in the fall, because instantly going into a new community, I was a lot more successful than I had been in the past. Just like not even as a player, but as a student, as everything. Like my last year at school was the worst I've ever done academically, and I don't struggle in school. That's like doesn't happen. But I would say like just reminding myself like growth isn't linear. Like it's not a one way street. Like, sometimes when people leave, they expect it to just be like a straight shot up and you never look back and everything's fine. But there were so many times where the past would keep creeping in, and stuff that had been spoken over me in the past, or stuff that I'd experienced in the past was like coming back to haunt me sort of on some bad days. But keeping my focus, like just like leaving that behind and focusing on forward, I think was like the best thing for me. But not getting mad at myself, obviously, when like there were times where I had to just push past it, and just like remembering like it's not linear. There's going to be bad days. It's greener sometimes, but there's going to be days where it's not. And just like remembering that and having the grace for myself through that process, I think.
I'm gonna have to borrow that. Growth isn't linear. So I love that comment.
One of the things that I'm assuming this is how you connected with Tami, but talk to us about building the confidence, especially in a transition like that. How do you how did you build up your confidence and stay at a high level to be able to compete at a high level?
I just would tell myself like no fear. Like I would go into practice, I would go into games, I would go into scrimmages, I would go into all that, and I would just say like I'm so done being afraid. Like I know that I can do this. And I think until you get to that breaking point, like sometimes like just building people up and building people up builds confidence, but also I think getting to like the lowest possible point where you're quite literally the only one left, it feels like, that believes in you, like summons that confidence, says, you know what, like actually I can do this. Like I know I can do this. Like I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to mess up. I'm not afraid to screw up. Like I know that I can do this. And just like slowing it down and trying to win every single second in time by itself and not letting it overwhelm me, I think was a big thing that helped from high school to college.
I love that. I often call it just win the moment, or just get through the moment and win the moment. If you don't win that one, win the next moment. So it sounds like you've done a lot of work with your self-talk and really changing it to positive and productive. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, yeah, definitely.
That to me, everyone listening, I don't care if you're an athlete, a parent, but that's a life changer, not just a game changer. At the center of my success circle, so you've got the unity, which again, you have wholeheartedly. You've changed your focus, you've built your confidence. But at the center is the why, like the bigger purpose of why you play your sport. And my belief is that's what keeps that whole circle going. So what is your why? Like what's the bigger reason of why you play softball now?
It's pretty like generic, but I love it. Like There have been me and softball have been through so much together. You have no idea. It's given me so much. Like I've learned so much. Like I've in the past year alone, like I learned how to speak up. I've learned how to have a voice. I've learned how to have the confidence to have a voice. I've learned when everything is falling down, like where you're planted is where you'll stay. Like I have learned so much about my foundation, and it's like helped me so much in my life, like with other things, like always having like the ability to walk by faith and knowing that everything's going to be okay, because I know myself and I know that I work hard and I know that I have the means what it means to be successful. But I think just all that it's taught me, like it's given me like so many sisters too, like across like the nation. Like there's girls on my team from Puerto Rico, and then there's ones from Wisconsin, and like there's just so many sisters and community and people that I've met. So there's like so many factors to why I love it, but I think most it's like given me the confidence to like have a voice, because I'm naturally like a really quiet kid. I'm not very assertive, but I think like learning how to speak for myself has been a really big like turning point for me.
One of the things that I've really enjoyed about these podcast interviews, listening to athletes that play and compete at a high level, obviously through that process to get where you are, you've had to have some goals that you were focused on. Talk to us about the whole process you've gone through, either now or in the past, on setting goals and your thoughts around goals.
I'm a planner, so I like to have everything in my life, my entire life planned out, from my career to what I'm gonna do. So goal setting is something that I think I really is a strength of mine, because I am such a planner, and when things don't go to plan, it's not good for me. But I think just like I always had a goal that I wanted to play in college. I always had a goal I wanted to play at the Division 1 level. And then when I faced struggles like last year, I think my goal had kind of shifted. It wasn't like, something that I could accomplish. It wasn't like a title, or it wasn't the ability to play somewhere. It wasn't that. It was just like my goal was to know myself and know myself as a player. That's just something that I had never even focused on, because I was always so busy on the next thing. Like I wanted to be good at travel ball. Like I wanted to be playing for the top teams of the nation. That was a goal for me when I was young. And then I got there, and then, okay, I want to go D1, and I got there. And throughout the whole process, it like wasn't even me. Like I didn't even know who I was as a player. So I think they kind of shifted a little bit as I got older into more like, I want to know who I am as a player. I want to know who I am as a person. And I want to use softball to teach me who that is pretty much. And so I think it's shifted my goals, but I think like it's been for the best, being more specific.
And so at the end of the spring season, what's it going to look like reaching that goal? Can you visualize that and see that?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to like get too ahead of myself, because just the fact that I'm still playing, honestly, like in the state that I was last year is such a blessing, but it's also I'm so proud of myself for trying again. But just like if I when I get to the end of this season, I think like just so much gratitude, like so much thankfulness for all the influences I've had, and honestly so thankful for the motivation I've given myself and that appreciation. I think the whole end of it will just be surrounded with so much gratitude.
What is one message? Because I know you are not the only collegiate athlete out there that has struggled with transition to college, that
Mhm.
has struggled by not that first college not being the right fit, or even being in a toxic environment and wanting to transfer, and then even thinking about giving up. So you've had three layers of adversity there. If you could leave those athletes that are feeling similar ways with one lasting message, what would it be?
I would just say that like redirection isn't a loss. Like it's so easy to have that perspective when, things don't happen the way you planned, but something changing is not always a loss. Leaving someplace you thought you once belonged is not always a loss. And I think there's just such beauty in the willingness to try again. And I think that separates like the good athletes from the great athletes, is because how many times are you going to fail and how many times are you going to try again? As people, as athletes, as softball players, as whatever, we are changing every single second. And I think like there's so much beauty in like being willing to try again and being willing to keep going, because I just like, if you can step into a new path knowing it's for the better, I think, and having the grace for yourself to heal throughout that process, I think like that mentality is so beneficial. So just like not viewing redirection always as being a failure or a loss, but just like a change of perspective.
In our book, Challenger Deep Athletes Rising Above Adversity, the whole idea of the book was to talk about athletes who have faced their own adversity, and rather than letting it knock them down, they've risen up and became better for it. And that's the whole idea behind this podcast as well, is to expose more people to people like you that have gone through adversity, risen up, and are marching forward from it. From the book, are there any stories that you particularly connected with or that you liked the best?
The "this is good" story, that's just great for me. My pitching coach from high school actually got me your book, the "This is Good" book, and I read it in high school. Just like that mentality has always helped me, but I was so upset for myself for so long for picking the first school that I picked, because I felt like it was such a waste. But I feel like my life really changed when I started viewing as like, okay, like this wasn't the best thing, but this is good, because I learned so much about myself. And like this mentality is so beneficial also because it just doesn't ignore like the pain or the difficulty or what you've been through, but it acknowledges it while seeking the good, which I think is like such a valuable perspective.
I know you've probably gained some new followers or people that want to follow your career. So how can they follow your career on the mound this season?
Well, all of our games are streamed on ESPN Plus, if anybody wants to watch. But also like I have social media, I post stuff. It's just my name, Caity Patterson. It's pretty easy. But yeah, we post stuff whenever we have games, whenever one of us does something cool or one of my teammates does something cool. So I would say that's probably just the best way.
All right. Well, we appreciate you so much, and I look forward to continuing to see you bloom and grow. So this has definitely been good. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caity.
Thank you for joining us on Challenger Deep, Athletes Rising Above Adversity. We hope these stories inspire and equip you to tackle life's challenges head on. Don't forget to visit www.confidentathleteprogram.com/Challenger Deep to get all of our free resources from the book, your copy of our book, and access to 2 free weeks of the Confident Athlete program. Remember, in life, adversity only visits the strong. It stays forever with the weak. Let's rise above together. See you next time.